This is a series of titles from news articles over the past 6 or 8 months of all of the violence that's been occurring in the world, devoted to global terrorism. Now, global terrorism is the religious war of radical Islam. So we are in a religious war. This group here is mainly about Iraq, and of course many of the attacks, besides militant troops, are with suicide bombers. And also they have truck bombs, car bombs, all kinds of these things. And a lot of civilians are killed in these bombings. As it turns out, of course, more civilians end up being killed than militants. So it's not a good situation for those people. These about Iran, and Iran, of course, is working towards developing nuclear weapons, even though they deny it. But we don't want them to be able to develop any nuclear bombs because it could cause untold damage. This is Afghanistan, and in Afghanistan the Islamists are called the Taliban. So we are conflicting the Taliban, and of course there are more troops at work in Afghanistan. Since the Iraq war is mainly over, the main fighting is now in Afghanistan. Next to Afghanistan is Pakistan, and of course the fighting has spilled over into Pakistan with many casualties. Car bombs are there too, and so on. So many people are dying in these wars. This group is sort of the rest of the world. Philippine Islands, of course Israel has some problems, and the Palestinians. North Korea is a militant government, and they also are producing problems. Here we have China has a few things there. They have a lot of ethnic unrest in China. Myanmar, which used to be called Burma, also is facing some problems. Sri Lanka and other African, some other African nations also have problems with terrorists. Somalia also has the Somali pirates, and they capture ships and hold them for ransom. So Yemen has problems, and so on. Now all of these problems would disappear if the Millennium Peace Plan were implemented, because it would bring permanent world peace. Now we're going to discuss the process of forming a global democracy to end global terrorism and totalitarianism. This is something that will work. The free democracies send representatives to a constitutional convention of the democracies that will form the United World Government. The founding nations, and about 2/3 of the world's 192 nations are some form of democracy, they will frame the United World Constitution. Now here are some major articles that would be in the United World Constitution. First, they would place the United World in charge of the entire world. Now this is essential. It would not be implemented immediately, but it would be used whenever necessary. Second, it would mandate that all international problems be resolved, with or without the consent or cooperation of the nations or groups involved. And of course, any war and violence is an international problem, but it also includes things like North and South Korea, or Israel and the Palestinians. These would all have to be resolved by the united world, and they would like the cooperation of the nations involved, but they would do it without if necessary. Third, we would ban any war and violence from the world forever. No more armed forces, terrorists, insurgents, or other militants would be allowed anywhere in the world. Fourth, we would require total worldwide disarmament for as long as necessary, and no country or group may possess weapons of war. Fifth, we'd form the United World Military for as long as necessary to enforce the United World Constitution. We will discuss the United World a little later on. But as Teddy Roosevelt said, when speaking to an enemy, speak softly, but carry a big stick. The United World Military will be the big stick that will enforce some of these other articles. 6, we would draft a code of world laws and set up a united world court. Of course, these would deal with any international problems. 7, review the constitutions of the founding nations and assemble the best features of all to form an ideal democracy constitution with separation of church and state that will be required to be adopted by every member nation. Now we'll say a little bit more about the ideal democracy constitution, but it is a keystone in the Millennium Peace Plan. Number 8, require every nation in the world to meet the requirements to be a member nation in the United World within 6 months. This will form a global democracy that will last forever. And we will discuss the idea of the member nation in a little while. Now, by the way, of course, my t-shirt here does represent what could happen with the Millennium Peace Plan. Now, once the United World is formed, and over 100 founding nations have become member nations with peace, freedom, equality, and ideal democracy for all of their citizens, and the United World Military has enforced the ban on war and violence all over the world, the remaining nations will cease to resist and will allow the United World to assist them in meeting the requirements to become member nations, completing the global democracy. The United World will bring global peace in 6 months.